Welcome back, everybody, to the Pat Flynn Show. We are here live with the man himself, Aleks, the Hebrew Hammer Salkin. He's actually sitting in my basement right now. In fact, if he just moves slightly, you might even be able to see my setup over there. He's out visiting Wisconsin for the week, and we're going to talk about kettlebell strength standards, mobility standards, conditioning standards that everybody should aspire to achieve. These are, of course, generalist standards. And when we talk about being a generalist, we talk about wanting to be, good to great, or at least fairly competent across a large, broad spectrum of physical abilities. So, Aleks, always good to have you joining me. Since we're in literally the same room, the same basement, I'm going to try and keep one of us muted while the other one's talking, so we don't get a weird echo. But good to see you, good sir.
Good to see you as well.
Yes, indeed. So, here I'm going to mute you again real quick. So I just I sent out an email this morning, and the previous episode I had with Dan John, we were jamming around on different standards, and I just want to say a few things about standards right at the get go that I think I think are just is necessary preamble, if you will. When I think about standards, I often think about sort of ranges. I talked about this with Dan, right? That we kind of want some sort of minimum floor, like let's at least get here, right? And if we're not at least here, then something's wrong, right? There's a real gap, there's a real deficiency. We want to at least be at the floor. But then I think it's also good to have some idea of a ceiling where, again, from a sort of generalist perspective, we can say, okay, we're strong enough, or we're mobile enough, or this is really good enough. I can now either hyper specialize if I really want, or I could just go focus on other skills, which is probably more appealing to generalists. So this idea of a floor and ceiling, we want to kind of at least be above the floor, but we don't necessarily need to go above the ceiling either. So that's the first thing I want to say about standards. That ranges are acceptable. We don't need just one specific point for any particular feet, but ranges are. It's good to have ranges, and of course, ranges. We're going to need ranges anyways, just to accommodate people based on age and weight and stuff like that. So I think it's better to have ranges than some hyper specific point. And then the other thing I want to say is that, to me, when we're looking at a standard, specifically like a physical feat or movement, I want something that is both demonstrative in and of itself, but can also be used to develop the thing under consideration. So, for example, let's take one just starting off, like the double clean and press. I think that's a good exercise to have a standard for. Maybe we can just start here. I think a good standard, a good baseline strength standard for the double clean and press is probably around 5 reps with 2 24-kilogram kettlebells for most men and around 2 16-kilogram kettlebells for most women. And here's the key, to make it look easy, right? I think that's not a crazy standard. It's a very reasonable standard. And to do 5 reps with that, to me, is something that demonstrates a number of things. Definitely upper body strength, good lower body power as well. So it definitely would be in the category of a strength standard. But you need good upper body shoulder mobility and stability also. So it demonstrates a number of things, but also that exercise itself helps to develop those things. It's not something that is just demonstrative. It's also a useful tool for developing and helping you to actually get to that standard. So that's my opening preamble, that for standards, I think we want floors and ceilings, and I think we want to focus on movements or exercises that are both demonstrative of the certain types of qualities that we're after and can help us develop those qualities. And I just started off with the double clean and press as an example. So over to you now, good sir, with your kind comments. I'll control the mute button, Aleks, so you just make yourself comfortable. Don't worry about that. You're on.
I think what you mentioned about the floors and ceilings is definitely useful, because one of the things that I think a lot of people run into is they decide, okay, I want to get stronger. I decided I want to do this, that, or the other thing. And maybe maybe they can't do any pull-ups right now. And so you ask, okay, how many do you want to do? Well, I want to, like 10. And then they get really kind of nervous because, like, gosh, I can only do 0. How am I going to do 10, right? So if you tell them, okay, well, why don't we just focus on like the first one, and your floor will be doing just 1, okay? Your ceiling will be 10. So this way, you've got something that you can look at initially, and then once you get to the floor, you can start working your way up to the ceiling. And I think a lot of times when people approach the concept of like standards, they're just thinking about the ceiling only. And so they're not looking at the range that's going to allow them to be successful. So I agree. I think That's at least psychologically, that's a very important part for most people. And I also agree that it is useful to pick movements that are not only going to help you to express certain physical characteristics or abilities, but they're going to help you to build them as well. So, yeah, I think that's a very good way to start the conversation, because it helps us to understand what exactly we're looking for and what we can consider a standard, what the parameters are, and so on and so forth.
Okay, yes, just be patient, gentle listeners, as I switch the microphone settings around. Again, Alex and I are literally in the same room right now, which is kind of awkward when we're trying to do a live stream together. But it'd be even more awkward if we were like just cuddled together in front of one mic. So this is the best we're going to do. Hey, sorry, we got a little bit ahead of ourselves. Before we start talking about these other standards, let me mention, of course, our beloved sponsor, Inverted Gear. If you're going to be pushing for kettlebell strength standards, you're going to need some kettlebells. So please consider supporting the show by getting your most awesome and spectacular kettlebells from Inverted Gear. You get 15% off their entire inventory if you use the link below, which is invertedgear.com/discount/PatFlynn15. Really solid kettlebells, awesome family-owned company. They're in stock, they ship fast, and you get 15% off. Can't beat it. So please consider supporting the show by supporting our sponsor, invertedgear.com/discount/PatFlynn15. Okay, so Alex, let's start getting into some of these standards, and we didn't discuss any of this beforehand, but we've discussed this many times previously, and I think our thought is often in development on this matter. So let me start off with the two that I think are pretty basic, pretty easily justified for me. The one I already gave was the double clean and press. I think this is a good exercise to have a standard around, because you need a lot of ducks in a row. When I think about standards, I think of something that is going to demonstrate hopefully more than one thing by your ability to perform it well. And we already hinted at a few things that the double clean and press demonstrates. It demonstrates strength, it demonstrates power, it demonstrates mobility, it demonstrates stability. To me, it also demonstrates a sort of, we need not just force production and reduction, important athletic qualities. We also need to learn the skill of force redirection with the kettlebell clean. So it's got this sort of all-encompassing athletic quality to it that I think it makes for a really good standard to be able to do this exercise well with a good amount of strength and power. I think, again, a reasonable standard is something around, I say something around, doesn't have to be exactly 224 kilograms for most men for a set of 5, and 216 kilogram for most women for a set of 16 kilogram for a set of 5 as well. Again, something around that, understanding that we can give or take a little bit depending on somebody's age, size, stuff like that. So that is worth shooting for. To me, what would be like a ceiling for that? I think for most average sized dudes, I think if you're operating with sets of 5, like easily with like 32 to 36 kilogram kettlebells, like you're definitely like rock solid at that point. With women, I think around with like 220 kilograms, like you're really rock solid around that point. Could you go heavier without totally wrecking yourself? Sure, but I think like once we're around that level, we're kind of nearing the ceiling as well. So quickly, let's let me get one more on the board here, and that's the kettlebell front squat. And when I mean front squat, I mean 2 kettlebells sitting on the forearm. We're in the rack position. I've got a million videos of it on my YouTube channel if anyone wants to see it. And I would say same weight prescriptions. I think 224 for men, 216 for women. But I'm going to bump the reps up. I'm going to say I would want to see 10 beautiful front squats where you make it look easy. And for me, when it comes to standards, the sort of the qualitative aspects are as important to me as the quantitative aspects. And I'd like to talk about this a little bit. When I mean qualitative aspects, I mean like you can do it with slickness and ease. It doesn't look like you're really struggling, right? There's consistency in technique. Like your 10th rep looks just as pretty as your first rep. So you have the quantitative aspects, how many reps you're doing, what weight you're using. But I also really want to emphasize the qualitative aspects. Great technique, good depth in the squat, flat back. The front squat, of course, is both demonstrative and helps to develop core stability, strength throughout, obviously tons of lower body strength, anterior and posterior chain, core stability, diaphragmatic breathing, all that good and wonderful stuff. 10 reps. What do you think about that, Alex?
That is exactly what I would say because, I like the idea of, maybe working your way up to like sets of 5 with a pair of 28s or 32s if you're a gentleman. But the difficult part about that is just getting the bells into place. It's not actually the squat itself. It's like the clean. It's holding it in the rack. It's a number of different things. So I think that with the double kettlebell front squat, it really does lend itself well to obviously to lower rep sets. But if you can work your way up to more moderate reps, like a set of 10, a lot of really good stuff starts happening. Not only is it going to help you to build a bit more muscle, your heart and lungs are certainly going to start to feel it, but it is going to be a bit more manageable in terms of holding the bells, because for a lot of people, it's actually the upper body that is the weak point for people who are doing double kettlebell front squats. If it's with a barbell, you have a couple of different strategies to hold the bar in place, so it's a little bit easier to go heavier, or quite a bit easier to go heavier. Less instability. With a pair of kettlebells, it will go a long way, even if you're only using a pair of 24s. So yeah, 10 reps, I think, is something that we can look at for, I don't know if we would call that a floor or a ceiling, or what exactly we would call it. I would say maybe ceiling, because after that, once you can do that, you should theoretically be able to start going a bit heavier. So I would say to begin with, work your way up to maybe a set of 5 as your floor, and then a set of 10 as your ceiling. And then if you decide that you want to go heavier, by all means, have at it. But don't even think about it until you can do a set of 10 with a pair of 24s.
Okay, Aleks. So I've put out 2 recommendations at this point. Why don't you go ahead and give us a kettlebell standard you think is something everybody should aspire to?
Well, I would say, and I've long held this to be the case, that if you can do 100 swings in 5 minutes with a given sized kettlebell, then you've earned the right to go heavier. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't still use the same bell, but look, why don't we just use the 24 kilo bell as the example? First work your way, and this is nice because it's kind of multi-layered. So you can really wear out the bell, as it were. You can do 2 hand swings for 10 sets of 10 in 5 minutes, right? You can then work your way up to 1 hand swings for 10 sets of 10, and then hand to hand swings. So within the 5-minute period, you can just work on making the movement a little bit more difficult by just changing the variation. But I think there seems to be like a sweet spot with swings where if you're doing 10 sets of 10, you've probably got a nice blend of power and strength, and it's not leaning too heavily into endurance, but it's something that you can rely on for being something that's going to help you to get quite a bit stronger and have a good carryover into the other things that you're doing. So that would be something that I would consider, let's say, a ceiling for a given weight of kettlebell. And it's not because, let's say, doing 200 reps with a given weight is not good, but rather because what we want to do is we want to try to find a general standard. So I would say maybe a set of 50 would be the floor, or not a set of 50, pardon me, but a total of 50 would be the floor. Total of 100 would be the ceiling with a given weight of kettlebell. And after that, you can think about starting to go a bit heavier. Now, the next thing that I would add, if I were going to do one other thing, let's say, with a kettlebell, I would add in the Turkish Get Up, and I would say, again, for gentlemen, 24 kilos, for ladies, 16. Try to do, over the course of 10 minutes, up to 5 per arm, meaning switching every time. And again, this is not a standard that I have really created. This is just one of those things that seems to be the sweet spot for people, because it allows you to do the Turkish Get Up without a lot of, let's say, like rushing through it or wailing and gnashing of teeth. It's pretty straightforward to do 5 slow, smooth get-ups over the course of 10 minutes, 5 on either side, that is, alternating sides. So again, with the 24, that should be your goal, or ladies, it should be 16. But that is what I would say. And I think if you can do those things, it's going to open a lot of doors for you in basically any other kettlebell technique.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Hey, real quick, gentle listeners who are tuning in live, how does my microphone sound? I know the past couple of episodes, it sounded a little bit like I was talking into a toilet. Does it actually, if you wouldn't mind in the comments, does it actually sound like I'm talking into the mic in front of my face, or that my computer is picking it up? If you could just give me a little feedback, I'd appreciate it. Apologies for technical difficulties. it's Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong always will with the Pat Flynn Show. But hopefully you can hear us good enough. Aleks, I like what you say. Obviously, the swing was going to make an appearance at some point because it is one of those movements that, again, when you can do a number of relatively heavy swings well, it's demonstrative of athletic ability, right? Power, coordination, even grace. That qualitative aspect of grace is there. Good conditioning, right? Power, all that awesome stuff. It will also help you to develop all of that. So this is like one of those great standards where the thing that you use to demonstrate your athletic ability is the thing that you use to improve your athletic ability. Now, some people might think, well, that just sounds obvious, Pat, but I think there are some exercises that can be demonstrative, but really aren't that useful for developmental purposes. And something that comes to mind is actually the pistol squat, right? The pistol squat is one of those exercises that people either tend to be naturally good at, like me. Like without ever practicing the pistol squat, I can probably crank out 20 to 40 pistol squats on one leg. Like I just got, if you're doubtful, my friend, I will show you after this podcast, right? And I also had a female client one time, just strong woman, good, just natural squatter. She never did pistol squats in her life. In the middle of a class, this was back in college where I would just teach endless kettlebell classes. She literally did 30 pistol squats like on one leg. I'm pretty sure it's still on my YouTube channel. Like, so it's just something she like naturally had. Other people, just because of their sort of, mechanical setup, like it's just the pistol squat's just never feasible for them, right? And it's one of those things that, yeah, you can practice it a lot, but it doesn't seem to develop a whole lot of other stuff. I'm not against the pistol squat. Like some people like absolutely hate it. There's a reason I wouldn't include that in my sort of set of standards, right? I'm looking for those exercises that both show us a lot and help us to develop a lot. So the swing is obviously a good example there. Snatching is another good one. So like even after the swing standard, I think the snatch is good because it adds that other athletic quality of force redirection, right? So again, force production, force reduction. We get that with the swing. With the snatch, we get force redirection. That's what oftentimes people ask, well, what's the use of doing snatches instead of swings? That's one of them, right? We get this athletic element of force redirection. We also get more of a pulling element and an overhead element too. There is, of course, the standard, and I think it's a decent one. I think it's closer to a ceiling than a floor, which is the 5-minute snatch test. I think an absolute ceiling is the 10-minute snatch test. Now, if people aren't familiar, the 5-minute snatch test is 100 reps, 5 minutes, 24-kilogram men, 16-kilogram women. I would say if we sort of give a range like 20 to 24 for men, 12 to 16 for women, I think is about right. And then, yeah, to me, the Secret Service snatch test was just 200 reps in 10 minutes. That's a definite ceiling. Like if you can do that, you're good with the kettlebell snatch. Like we can do other things. Snatch, of course, has other elements too, athletic qualities such as coordination. Right, there's a lot of coordination. It's not like massive amounts of coordination. You're not like playing like a highly technical song on the piano, but there's enough coordination in this that I think it makes it a worthwhile endeavor as well. Okay, so far, and what else is it going to demonstrate? It's going to demonstrate incredible endurance, physical endurance, grip strength, great for grip strength, power, and I would say this element of grit, mental toughness. Because if you have the other aspects in place, your power and your grip and your conditioning is pretty good, what you're going to find with something like the 5 and especially the 10-minute snatch test is just this mental aspect where your mind is going to want to quit before your body does. And I think that is something that we all should strive to develop as well. All right, people are saying that my microphone does sound a bit echoey, but you can hear me okay. I don't know why that is the case, guys, but if you will entertain me, I'm sorry to have to do this live. I would be curious if you notice an improvement if I switch my microphone setting real quick. So let's try this. Does this sound better or worse? I just made a switch. If anybody can just let me know real quick. Does this sound less echoey? Does this sound cleaner? Or does it sound the same? If you can let me know in the comments, I would appreciate it. And now I'll be quiet and let Aleks chime in with his thoughts and everything I just said.
Well, with the snatch, I have to say that I agree. If you can do 200 reps in 10 minutes, I think you've probably gone as far as you really need to go. I mean, you can keep going, obviously, but like you mentioned earlier in the episode, you get to a certain point where you're just working. You've gone past like the generalist benefits of a given exercise, and you have to start working towards specialization. And I would say, being generous, I would say like for the snatch, if you want a floor, I would say 50 reps in 5 minutes, which is perfectly reasonable. With a 24 or a 16, depending on whether you're a gentleman or a lady, and then 100 would be the ceiling, and then going beyond, I would say would be like 200 reps. Because for me, if you're doing 200 reps in 5 minutes with that weight, I'm sorry, 200 reps in 10 minutes with that weight, that's just something that I think you have to practice a little harder for. In fact, Pat, I remember many years ago, you wrote an article about how your students could routinely hit the 5-minute snatch test standard of 100 reps in 5 minutes without really needing to practice it. And so I think that it is perfectly conceivable that you can do that. It is a lot less likely that you'll be able to do that with a 10-minute snatch test. So my floor for snatches with a 24 or a 16 would be 50 reps, and the ceiling would have to be 100. And then I would view anything beyond that as being specialization to a certain degree. It's not like super high level specialization, but you're going to have to put a lot more effort into it.
Right. Yeah. Real quick, to be annoying again, does this sound better for my mic, gentle listeners? I just realized maybe my microphone was actually just completely turned in the wrong direction. So I just spun it around, and maybe I'm actually talking into the appropriate spot now. So if you could let me know in the comments, please do. It's just one of those things that really annoys me if I know that the sound quality isn't what it could be or should be. I care about you, gentle listeners. I don't want you to be straining to hear us. Okay, so to recap so far, we've talked about the double clean and press standard. We've talked about the front squat standard. We've talked about swings. We've talked about get-ups. I think the get-up standard is great. I think another get-up standard. So the standard you gave for the get before, Alex, I think that's a good sort of baseline strength, and even a relative conditioning standard, because you got to get a certain number of reps in. I think another good standard for the get-up is just a pure movement quality standard, and this is Dan John's standard for the get-up. So I want to put it out there, and that is to be able to do a get up. I'm going to do a little demo here with a cup of water, like a Dixie cup of water, balancing on your knuckles. So the key is it should balance on your front two knuckles like this. If you're watching, this is what it should look like on your hand. And the idea here is you should be able to perform an entire get up slowly and beautifully without spilling that cup of water. Now, the key is you don't get to cheat and wrap your thumb around. The thumb has to be tucked. You're just making a fist. And what this will do is it will give you a great feedback system to make sure that everything is aligned through the stanchion of your skeleton throughout the entire movement. And what I would say is the standard for that is to be able to do, I would say, same thing, 10 minutes, be able to get at least 1 rep per minute, and be able to do that on both sides without ever spilling the cup of water. I think that's a great sort of movement and mobility standard. Now let's switch gears here. This isn't a kettlebell standard per se, but this is I think a fair standard to include, and that's pull-ups or chin-ups. I think somewhere between I'm just going to say 10 reps for men. I think 10 reps is a good standard. And the thing with the pull-up is this, right? It's one of those exercises that it's hard to keep getting better at unless you kind of like get better across the board. So what do I mean by that? I mean, like, you can keep getting better at the military press as you keep getting fatter and unhealthier, right? Across the board. That generally isn't the case with the pull-up, right? If you keep getting like fatter and bigger and unhealthier, even if you keep like increasing your pulling strength, you're always going to kind of be fighting against yourself. So the pull-up is one of those exercises where to like be really good at pull-ups, I think you have to be a kind of a decent generalist all around, right? Yes, you have to have good upper body strength, good endurance, but you also probably have to have it's going to be hard if you're very overweight, for example. I'll state it conservatively like that. So I think, I always go back and forth. I think like 5 to 10 certainly for men, and like 1 to 3 as your sort of floor. And I'm counting these as floors, right? For women. And I'd be willing to say pull up or chin up. So palms pronated or supinated is fine with me. Aleks, I know you're a big fan of the pull-up, so why don't I let you chime in here? And it sounds like that the mic sounds better. Let me know. Does it sound a lot better or a little better? Like, does it sound like I actually fixed the issue or just slightly modified it? Thank you, Aleks. Over to you.
I agree with the floor and ceiling standards for the pull up because generally speaking, like men have the kind of upper body strength where they should be able to do 10 pull ups, and it's not going to require any special programming to make it happen. Likewise with ladies, I mean, I've taught women in their 50s to do pull ups for the first time, so it's not unreasonable to expect even just one. I say expect because if the lady doesn't really care about doing pull-ups, can't really force her to do it. But if you do have your sight on that, I can assure you that your age is really not as much of a factor as you might think in most cases. In fact, one of the participants here, going under the creative pseudonym of Sammy Kadira, did one of my pull-up challenges, and for the first time in her life, she was able to do a pull-up, and it. And she, I'm not going to give her age because you don't do that. Okay. So Sammy, I'm looking out for you. But yeah, suffice it to say that asking for one pull-up for women, regardless of their age, is certainly reasonable. And I definitely think 5 is absolutely reasonable as a ceiling as well. And again, it doesn't mean you can't go beyond it, but if you want to have, we can look at the ceiling as if you want to have like reasonable expectations of what you can do without any super specific or super special programming. Certainly doable. Likewise with men, 5 as an absolute like floor, no question about it. Ceiling, yeah, 10, absolutely doable. And again, no real special programming or tricks or anything like that are going to be necessary. And you can always go beyond that. I think if you just do them more regularly, whether you're a man or a woman, you're going to find that you'll blow past the ceiling anyway. So yeah, by all means, I don't think there's really a whole lot that can be added. But I do want to make sure that I mention that I agree with what Pat said, is that either overhand or underhand or neutral grip, those are all fine. One thing that I've heard, I haven't experienced it. I've experienced it a little bit personally, but I've heard it a lot more from other people, is that overhand pull-ups have a tendency to bother people's elbows past a certain age. I'm not 100% convinced that it's actually the age that's the factor. I think that more than anything, it has to do with the fact that they're only relying on that one variation and not others. So if I were you, I would work on getting good at all of them. The underhand and the neutral grip are going to be the easier ones to obtain and maintain. Overhand is typically a little bit more difficult, but all of them count. So if you can only do your pull-ups like this or like this, we'll count it. They do not have to be overhand grip, but to the best of your ability, you should certainly mix up the grips so that you can protect your elbows and better develop your pulling muscles and all that other good stuff.
Excellent. So we will take some questions here in just a minute, gentle listeners. And thank you for helping me to figure out my mic situation. It sounds like the feedback is all very positive. As it happens, my mic was just facing the wrong direction, which is not entirely my fault because it's got this big cover on it. So I guess, you know whose fault it is, Aleks? It was my wife's fault. She was down here playing with, and she spilled a drink all over my books, my guitar amplifier, and turned my mic around. And now I'm going to have words with Christine. Actually, I'm not, because I am far more annoying to her than she ever is to me. So, all right, two other things. All right, quickly, kind of like just generalist, not even kettlebell related, but still important. I think you should be able to hold a plank for at least a minute, uninterrupted, good, solid plank. If you can get up to 5 minutes, yeah, definitely. If you can hold a solid 5-minute plank, you got the plank, my friends. But definitely get to a minute. I think another good minute standard exercise is the hollow hold, right? If we want a good direct core standard exercise that is both demonstrative and will help develop really good overall core strength, I think the hollow hold, working up to 60 seconds uninterrupted, which is serious business, my friends. It doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're doing a good hollow hold, compressed midsection, low back, pressing hard into the ground, in that tight banana position, 60 seconds is not easy. I think that's a definite standard worth working up to. So 60-second plank, 60-second hollow hold, definitely good. And then I would say just being able to run a quick and light mile is another good one. I'm not even going to put a time to it, 6-ish minutes-ish, something like that, right? Like a quick, but I'd rather it be like quick but light feeling, like it feels easy for you to do that. I think that I would focus more on the sort of qualitative aspects of that, where you can kind of breeze through a mile pretty easily, rather than just the quantitative hit this exact number. So yeah, Alex, any quick thoughts on that? And then we'll take some, and anything else you'd want to add, and then we'll take some questions from the gentle listeners here.
Yeah, I like all those standards. I think a lot of times people who are really focused on the kettlebell in particular like to they sometimes forget about like body weight or other movements, but it is really really complementary to all of your kettlebell goals. The only thing that I would add in there would be crawling, and I would say at all the original strength resets, which is the perspective I'm coming at this from, because crawling makes up part of the original strength resets, which is a system organized around a human developmental sequence to help you regain and regain your natural movement, rejuvenate your body, and so on and so forth. But I think that the like crawling with as a floor, we'll say on the hands and knees for 5 minutes. Ceiling, I would say knees off the ground just a little bit, because you see people with their butts way up in the air and their knees are like super, super high up. But knees just a little bit off the floor, crawling for up to 5 minutes nonstop. And you can change directions as much as you want. But that is going to be something that is going to have more carryover into more things than I could even list here. So it's certainly worthy as a standard. But start off hands and knees only, and then work your way up to hands and feet, knees just barely off the ground. It's the only thing I would add.
Okay, we will take some questions now real quick. Andrew says, let's get these standards written up and distributed. So I already sketched some of these out on my in my daily email today. So if you're on my email list, you already have them in your inbox. If you're not, as part of my email list, then I invite you to join it, because that's where I think I share my my very best content. And you can join that at chroniclesofstrength.com/challenge workouts. That will get you my new collection of I bet you can't do this workout challenges. And there's 11 high intensity time crunch workout challenges there, totally free. chroniclesofstrength.com/workout challenges. That will get you on my email list. And what I will also do is, once this episode goes on the podcast and we build out the show notes, Alex and I will just type them up and put the standards over at the show notes page as well, just to give a little update there. All right, let's just take a few questions here. Here, we'll just kind of bounce around a little bit. Sal says, tips for the snatch so that it beats up the forearm less. Yeah, I'll offer a few thoughts and let Alex give his tips. One, when you're first learning the snatch, I think this is really important. When you're first practicing the snatch, I think it's very helpful to actually practice it in reverse first. Start from the top down. And the idea is you get into the middle, you press the kettlebell up, and then you practice throwing the kettlebell down, like literally like an overhand softball throw. It shouldn't be this passive thing. You want to be pretty aggressive with it. And you throw the kettlebell. Now, if you're watching, there's a secret technique. I'm going to show you guys a secret technique of the kettlebell snatch. If you imagine that my finger here is the kettlebell handle, kind of deep in the base of the palm, when I throw the kettlebell, that handle should momentarily jump over that callousy part of my hands and then reconnect in the crook of my fingers as I drag it down towards my stomach. So this is called the drop and catch technique. So ideally, the kettlebell should never really be dragging across this callousy part of your hand. It should jump from here to here. And it's like a split second. So you can't really see it in real time, but it's just this little pop recatch from the base of your palm into your fingers. Once you just first throw that kettlebell at the top, you recatch it. And the idea here is I want you to think that you're throwing the kettlebell to your stomach, like you're trying to throw the kettlebell into your stomach. Now, why on earth would you imagine such a thing? Well, if that is your aim, this is going to help you keep the kettlebell really close to your body. It's going to tame the arc. And then what's going to happen is you're going to move your hips out of the way at the last second. You're going to have a really tight, tamed kettlebell snatch trajectory, which is what we want for efficiency. And then by getting this movement down in reverse over and over and over, the pattern will become efficiently ingrained that you'll sort of automatically begin to efficiently reverse it, right? And the idea on the way up is you really need to do two things, right? You need to loosen your grip, because if you grab the kettlebell too hard, it's not only going to grind that callousy part of your hands, but it's going to delay the rotation, it's going to stall, and then it's going to kerplunk right down on your forearm, which is probably the issue that you're having, Saul. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that on the way up, your grip is loosening, and then at about like eyebrow level, it varies per person, but there's that moment where the kettlebell's kind of weightless. You got to be that annoying kid in class who just wants to answer every question, right? You got to shoot that hand up really fast. You got to get your hand there before the kettlebell, and that will ensure a smooth rotation onto the forearm. So practice in reverse, master the drop and catch, keep a loose grip, get your hand there before the kettlebell would be my 4 primary tips. Aleks, let's hear some of yours.
One of them that I would toss in would be what Mark Rifkin calls the 1-inch punch drill. And it is a way of learning how to move the kettlebell around your arm and to do it in, like, let's say, in the middle of a swing. So basically what you do, I can't really demonstrate it right now, but I'm sure Mark has some videos of this. But what you do is you would swing.
Aleks, real quick, I'm pretty sure you actually have a video of this on my YouTube channel. I feel like we did a snatch tutorial together where you demonstrated this. Somebody can fact check that, but I'm pretty sure it's there. Mm-hmm.
I think you might be right about that. So yeah, just check Pat's channel, because I know I've made videos about this in the past. I just never know where the videos end up. You know, it's like that's just the way of the world. So that's the only other thing I would add, because really, if you're doing it from the top, like, it's easier to learn almost every single kettlebell movement from the top down, and the snatch is no different, because you want to know where the kettlebell is going to end up, and you want to be familiar with that, because just trying to figure out where it's going to end up at the top is what is causing you to bang your forearm with the kettlebell. So follow all of Pat's recommendations, and it's going to make it a lot easier. But if you also want to get used to the moving of the kettlebell around the hand, so that it lightly and gently makes contact with the forearm, the 1-inch punch drill is the only other thing I would add.
Excellent. Here's a good one from Michael. He says, a quick and easy mile and pull-ups will keep you honest about relative strength, while absolute strength allows you to get fat. Speaking from experience here, any other honesty checks? Well, you nailed it, my friend. That's exactly why I put those in there. And I think a good set of standards should not only tell you what you're good at, but it should tell you what your problem isn't. And it should help you to identify gaps. And again, we're thinking about this from generalists. If somebody's just a hyper specialist of something, different story, different podcast, right? But if you want to be a generalist and you want to be well-rounded, and even if you want to have a well-rounded out personality like Aleks Salkin, who doesn't want to have a well-rounded out personality, then you need a set of standards that will keep you honest in all these other areas, because you're absolutely right. Is like, even the first 2 standards, double clean and press and front squat, like, they're pretty amenable to people who are just whopping flopping whales, right? Like, you can keep getting stronger and keep getting fatter, that you could be quite unhealthy but still probably do those standards. And in fact, they might be easier if you just keep packing on the pounds, right? So we want other standards that are going to keep us honest and keep us balanced out, and things like the pull-up and the mile run. And I would also say Alex's crawling would be another sort of honesty standard, right? To make sure that I'm not just riding the car with like an obvious flat tire. That's the analogy Dan gives, right? Like, we want to make sure that we have all the tires pressurized. As for other ones, Aleks, I'm going to kick it over to you first. So do you think there's any other good honesty standards that we should include here?
Any bodyweight exercise is going to be a good honesty standard, because here's the thing. I mean, ultimately, all bodyweight training is moving your body through free space. So it's very clear that if you put on some weight in your pull-ups and your pull-up numbers go down, you've gotten weaker. If you put on some weight and your pull-ups stay the same, you have probably gained a bit in strength, because in fact, let me go back a second, because let's say you can do 5 pull-ups, then you put on some weight, and now you can only do 4. Well, you might have gotten weaker. You might be roughly the same in strength. You just don't have the ability to do it at your current body weight. So you're not doing yourself any favors. If you put on weight and you can still do 5, it's reasonable to say that you've gotten stronger, because now you're doing the same amount of pull-ups with slightly more weight. And if you put on some weight and you can do more pull-ups, you've got the best of both worlds, because now you have increased the resistance in some fashion. I would like to think that the extra weight would come from muscle, but maybe it's not. But you can still do, let's say now you can do 6 reps instead of 5. You've gotten stronger because you've got more weight and you can now do more reps. So win-win. But the same will go with push-ups. So if you can do like 20 push-ups and you weigh, let's say, like 180 pounds, and then you put on 10 pounds and you can only do 15 push-ups. Well, your weight, your strength has either stayed the same or it's gone down. If you can do 20 push-ups at your new 10 pounds heavier weight, your strength is improved. And let's say now you can do 25 at 190 pounds instead of 180. You've gotten stronger and you put on some more weight. Same goes for any body weight exercise whatsoever, because your body is the resistance. When the resistance increases and your reps either stay the same or go up, you're in a pretty good position. If they go down, that's when you need to, that's your honesty check, and that's when you need to start making some adjustments.
Speaking of pull-ups, Aleks and I have to get to the gym and do our pull-ups. So we're going to have to wrap this one up. I know we didn't get through all the questions, but what we will try to do is a dedicated Q&A, at least one, before Aleks returns to the great state of Omaha. He's here at least, I believe, till Tuesday. So expect some more impromptu live streams from the two of us. In the meantime, I want to thank all of you gentle listeners for tuning in. Just a few quick mentions before we go. If you haven't already gotten my new I Bet You Can't Do This workout challenge collection, it's free. Head over to chroniclesofstrength.com/challenge workouts. That will get you that nice new PDF. It'll put you on my email list. Aleks, let's make sure you get a few mentions and plugs here as well. Where can people keep up with you, and what sort of goodies do you have for the gentle listener?
Well, you could always keep up with me at aleksalkin.com. I'm, without question, I'm most active on my email list because I send out an email jam-packed with tips, tactics, techniques, and strategies that you can use to get stronger, more resilient, and harder to kill on a daily basis. I've got a challenge that I think you would like because, we talked a lot about standards, reaching certain standards and that sort of a thing. And my, let's say, magnum opus for helping to reach a bunch of standards would be the 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge. And you can get that if you go to 9minutechallenge.com, and it's free. And I've had a lot of really, really good feedback from it. It's easy to put into any workout that you're currently doing, so you don't have to switch programs or anything like that. Just tack it on at the beginning of the end, beginning or the end, and you're good to go. So 9minutechallenge.com, and you will be able to crush weakness all the live long day.
Sweet. All right, gentle listeners, thanks for tuning in. As always, please please share with both of your friends. Please subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Fare thee well.